Hi, Tom Stoner with PESADO Construction Equipment Manager. Glad to be here today with Tom Bynum. He's conducting our training through RDO, and I appreciate you guys being here today, Tom. This is really important to us because obviously we spend a lot of money on this equipment, and it's good to be able to do refreshers with our operators.
Yes, it is. Well, thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. Let's see if we can perhaps show an operator what a pre-shift inspection looks like.
Okay, well, I appreciate that.
No problem. One of the first things I like to do on any pre-shift inspection is get into a routine. You always want to do it the same way each and every time. So I typically start on a wheel loader at the articulation joint by the stairs going up into the operator's position, and I'll work around the machine in a counterclockwise manner until I come back to this location. So when we start here, I definitely want to point out the periodic maintenance chart that's located on every Deere wheel loader that is produced. It may not be in this exact same location, but it'll be somewhere on the left side of the machine, so you may have to look for yours on your particular model. The periodic maintenance chart is a good place to look for the different hour intervals for all the different recommended services, oil changes, filter changes, grease lubrication points that need to be touched on this machine. We also have all the recommended fuels and lubricants listed here as well with an ambient temperature chart to make sure you're using the right oil for the temperatures that we have outside. There's also a nice diagram here that points to every one of these maintenance items and shows you where in the frame that particular item is located in case you're not familiar with it. First thing I like to do is start off and look inside the articulation joint. And there's really two major things that we want to look for during any kind of pre-shift inspection. We want to look for fluid levels to make sure they're appropriate to run the machine so we don't cause any harm to anything. And we want to look for any safety defects, any missing hardware, damaged hardware, anything that might make the machine less than safe to operate. So in here I'm going to look for any kind of hose leakage that I can see. I'm going to look for puddles underneath the machine, any kind of obvious signs that I've got some type of an active leak. I also want to check out my transmission. This is where I'm going to check my transmission oil level. So in here is a sight gauge. And there is a decal on the outside of the machine that actually shows you where the appropriate level oil should be. In the morning, first thing when the machine is cold, that sight gauge should be completely full of transmission oil. Once it comes up to operating temperature after you've been running it for a while, that level should settle into the hot zone on that same sight gauge. If you need to add any oil, this is the add port for the transmission oil. Once we've got the articulation joint pretty much looked at, we're going to go ahead and start working our way around the machine. I want to take a look at any item on here. For instance, these stairs. You'll notice there's a little bit of damage here on the stair. Probably not enough to make the loader inoperable, but definitely something to pay attention to. We want to look for any loose or missing bolts. As a matter of fact, this bolt here is brand new. We found earlier today that it was missing, so we had the mechanic replace it. These are the kind of things we want to keep an eye out for as an operator. We want to keep working our way back. We want to check out not only this tire, but all four as we work around the machine. I want to look for any signs of obvious damage to the tire. I want to look for sidewall cuts. I want to look for missing lugs in the tread or cracking. Anything that might cause the tire to degrade over time. I want to look at the rim and I want to look at the mounting hardware. Make sure it's all intact and complete. Nothing is broken, nothing is missing. It all looks pretty well here. I don't see anything that would cause me any indication that I've got an issue, so I'm going to keep working my way around. All John Deere loaders are serviced from ground level on the left side of the machine. So I'm going to open up the left side engine compartment door here, and in here we're going to see that we have our air filter. We've got our oil and fuel filters located in this location as well. I'm going to check all those out. I'm going to check the dipstick for the engine oil. I pull a rag out of my pocket here and pull the dipstick. I'm going to wipe that off, stick it back in. and then pull the dipstick back out. And I'm going to look to make sure that the oil level is between the two different notches on the dipstick. This one looks like it's good, it's full of oil. I'll go ahead and replace the dipstick. If it was low, I would then take the fill cap off and get some oil and fill it up to the appropriate level. I want to take the air filter here and pinch the unloading valve, drop any loose dirt that's accumulated off of the air filter. I also want to check to make sure all those clamps are completely seated properly. That air filter there is probably the most important filter on the John Deere loader. That one, above all other filters, needs to be maintained adequately, clean, and make sure that it doesn't come loose. Once I get done with that, I'm going to go ahead and button the engine compartment back up. This is the windshield washer fill bottle. You'll notice that it's empty, so this would need to be filled up so the operator can keep his front windshield clean so he has better visibility. Next, I'm going to open up the fuel area on the machine. This is the diesel fuel. This is an older machine, so it does not have DEF fluid. On the newer machines that also use DEF because they're final Tier 4 emission controls, the DEF nozzle would be located right next to the diesel nozzle. Diesel would have a green cap, the DEF would have a blue cap. Make sure you try to keep this area as clean as possible before you take those caps off or to fill any new fluids in. Typically, I always recommend that when you fill up the machine with fuel, you should top off the DEF tank. The way that the loader runs, you typically run probably twice as much fuel as you do out of DEF. So you should always run out of fuel before you ever run out of DEF, unless you're not topping the DEF off at the same time you do your fuel. If you were to run out of DEF and still try to run the loader, it will derate and it will not allow you to operate efficiently until you get the DEF system back up and running properly. Next, we're going to open up the quad cool package, and I want to show everybody what they should look for on the John Deere loader. So first, we're going to open up our side compartment doors. You'll notice there is a decal here that says open side door before opening cooling fan door. Now it's not just one side door, it's both side doors. So I'm going to walk around over to the other side and open this one up as well. If you don't do that, and you try to open up the rear door, it will put this pin in a bind and you could bend it and make it very difficult to open up. Next, I'm going to come around back to the fan door, and I'm going to open this up as well. Now, there's really no daily operating service checks inside here, but I do like to open it up just to look for any leaks on any hoses or look for any debris that might be lodged in the coolers that will lessen the effectiveness of my radiators. Everything looks pretty good here. Could probably stand to have a good clean out. I would probably let my service guys know so they could get in here and maybe get this scheduled to be cleaned out before it goes back in the field. We'll go ahead, button our doors back up. I want to make sure I pay close attention to things like the lights on the back of the loader. They don't appear to be damaged in any way. As far as I know, they work just fine. The only way to know for sure is to get up in the cab and turn on the electrical system and make sure that they are functioning. But at least I don't see any obvious signs of external damage to them from the outside of the loader. I want to keep looking underneath the loader for signs of any leaks that are coming out of the engine compartment. Very, very critical to make sure we don't have some type of a fluid leak back here that we need to take care of. On the right side of the machine, the engine compartment door opens up very similar to the way that it does on the other side. However, there are no actual daily operating service checks that need to be performed from this location. But it's always a good idea to open it up and at least take a look inside to make sure we don't see anything obviously missing or any leaks or anything going on in this area. Go ahead and close that back up. I'm going to keep working my way around. I'm going to look at this tire as well, look for any obvious signs of damage. Looks like the metal might be a little dinged right here on the rim. It's not real bad, but I definitely want to keep an eye on that. There's also a bit of a sidewall cut here on the tire. There again, doesn't necessarily mean that it's not serviceable, but I would want to make sure that this tire is not losing any air, so I would probably want to check this with a tire gauge periodically just to make sure it's maintaining proper tire inflation pressure. If you don't know what the inflation pressure should be for your particular loader, make sure you get with somebody in the service department to ask them so they can tell you what it needs to be. And then you need to check that periodically. I don't say you would have to do it every day, but at least once a week or so, I would be putting a chuck on each one of these tires to make sure they are appropriate to what they should be. The battery box is located here. There is a main disconnect switch. So, as with all John Deere loaders, if you ever get up in the cab and you had no electrical power, first thing I would do is come down here and make sure somebody hasn't turned this off by mistake. We'll go ahead and set that back to on. If you needed to work on this loader or secure it, you could turn the 24-volt system power off here at the battery box. You can also put a padlock on this to keep somebody from being able to access it. I want to come around, I want to look at the cab, I want to look at things like the windshields. Are they broken? Are they cracked? Something that needs to be taken care of. I want to look at my rear view mirrors and the lights. Is anything missing? Is anything broken? They appear to be in good working order, so I don't see anything that would cause me any kind of concern at this point. Still, I want to keep working my way around the loader, check out this tire. Everything looks complete. The tire looks like it's in good shape. I want to check out the linkage on the front of the machine. I want to make sure that the pins are being greased properly. So I want to look for signs of fresh oil and grease on here to make sure that they are being serviced at the appropriate level. I want to look for any obvious leaks coming off my hydraulic cylinders on the boom or the bucket. I want to look at my linkage, make sure there's no cracks or anything broken or missing. All the pin flag bosses are in place. They're not missing. So everything looks pretty good here. We're going to keep working our way around to the bucket. I want to look for any loose or missing hardware, any missing cutting edges or worn cutting edges. This cutting edge is getting pretty worn, but it's not necessarily all the way down to the nub yet. At some point though, in the near future, it's going to have to be taken off and either flipped if it hasn't been already, or a new cutting edge put on. I want to look at the top of the cab. I want to make sure the lights are all intact up there. I want to make sure that the windshield from this side looks good. No obvious damage to the bucket. Everything looks good. As we come around, I check my last tire. There again, I don't see any obvious defects with the tire or the mounting hardware or the rim. Everything looks pretty appropriate. The tire doesn't look like it's squatting overly too much, so it's probably got fairly good air inflation, although this would be the time to take your air chuck out and actually make sure that tire was aired up properly. From here, we're back to where we started. Once we get back to this point, I've worked my way all the way around the loader to make sure there's nothing obviously broken, missing, leaking. I'm going to say this loader is probably acceptable to work with. I'm going to go ahead and enter the cab, get my seat adjusted properly, get my mirrors adjusted properly, turn the loader on, and make sure I don't have any diagnostic trouble codes that are coming in that need to be addressed, and I'll be able to begin my day of production. With that, that is your typical pre-shift walk-around inspection.